Once the ego is recognized, it is necessary to follow up his, what Hegel is understood as look philosopher, as if you took someone's arm and we took to a particular place. Thus, the philosopher must lower the ego, as if it was him, but with the awareness that this attitude, this pseudo-identification, is needed only to start the process, to go all the way. As I stated earlier, now the obstacle is how the philosopher positions the ego, and this factor is critical, since from there will be a set, its spiral path to be followed by consciousness. In this sense, the philosopher, while ego must prostrate in respect of the conflict between consciousness and the unconscious, not identified either as subject or as an object of knowledge, but sustaining the dialectic tension-caused conflict between them. This conflict between consciousness and the unconscious is nothing but the battle of what Nietzsche in 1888 posthumously called quanta-dynamic tension in a relationship with all other dynamic quanta. It turns out that currently conceive of consciousness we have as the last resort for our understanding of reality. We left her and her return as if it were the only instrument, completed in itself, that we, or rather as if we were to have it in its entirety. Assuming that our time is free of spirituality, which to me seems visible, it makes sense to shut us in the current consciousness model in our contemporary losing the wealth of questions, but our origin or purpose, reflections these that make possible a new look at our unique presence in the world. Why do we boycott ourselves in a progress reaching each accomplishes? Why is it that we cling to models when, in the exercise of our creativity, the realization of a new, thinking, scientific construction would be the source of a joint development? It presupposes a process of reflection that takes us from what hitherto has been in force as a last resort that we use when it comes to ego identification. A man immersed in the current values of the current world is a missing contact man himself, out of his ethos, address, and so far an ethics which is not as a rule of conduct, but as a constant assessment of what it is helpful or not, what suits you or not. It is the significant obstacle. Think of the unconscious nature of what constitutes us. Believe that man does not end on that of current awareness model currently. More directed the originating neurophysiological processes in the brain according to show the neuroscience studies. To clarify what Nietzsche called quanta-dynamic, I can also say about a game of forces, quantum vectors each other collide within the individual, tensing it in search of a synthesis. In this sense, who acts on all these vectors is the affection command, or the resulting Jung called transcendent function. The affection that stands in the conflictive relationship between consciousness and the unconscious. To explain more affordably what comes to communicating the word affection command, should I turn to a brief explanation of what Nietzsche called the will to power, which does not seem healthy for this work. In Beyond Good and Evil, for example, he states that the will is not only a complex of feeling and thinking, but above all, an affection that affection command. Why the philosopher, temporarily identified with the ego, must sustain the conflict of forces to the being in its coming to be is constituted as an expansion of consciousness, causing the new state's experience ego, of course, higher. Each synthesis elaborates a new state of consciousness that is reached, a quantum leap is given. Like everything new causes fear, astonishment or perplexity, the ego is also perceived a little confused in this cloudiness in which he now is. But just at that moment the ego, B, is neither what he was or what he is coming to be. It is still, in my view, a quantum cloud formed waves, as during the transition from one state to another there are the coordinates of time and space. They re-emerge when the ego reach a new orbit or state of consciousness. Until the electrons will be to organize to give stability to the ego still groping a seat, it can only again be recognized as such when you reach the next steady state.